So welcome back to American Pulse. So we're happy to have you, Senator Golden, here today. And after we saw in the report the amount of people that gushed out to the Egyptian consulate in New York to vote for the new president, these people have been here for some of them over 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, and they're still somehow loyal to their home country. What do you think of that?
I think that's something that is in your heart and in your soul. You're born in a country, and that is something that you will never, ever lose. And there's always that burning desire to want to go back and to live in your country, and the country, whatever country you came from. My parents came from Ireland. My father always wanted to go back and live in Ireland, and the reason he left because there were no jobs in Ireland. And that, I believe, is the same in any person that comes and leaves, whether they be a teenager or a young boy or a man or a woman that's matured, that leaves that nation, always has that desire to go back. I remember listening in my home, and my mother had left Ireland in 1940s and 1990s. To this day, we still listen to Irish programs and Irish music, and we still go to Irish cultural events. And the same thing within the Egyptian families. They still go to here in this great nation. You'll see different cultural events that we have within the Egyptian community, and you'll see the people come out and pour out in the different towns and villages and go to the different dances and meet at church or at the mosque and have the conversations that they would have. I
remember the Italian festival in 18th Avenue.
Yes.
I used to live there.
So for the Egyptian to see what is happening today in Egypt and to be part of history, the changing of a dictatorship, a brutal government, and to see the possibilities of real positive change for a nation that needs that ability to be able to grow, I think is something that's proud, and they all are proud, and that's why you see so many people going out and so many people voting for LCCD to make sure that these changes take place.
So you think they felt the urge to get out and help?
Yes.
Do you think
they felt not the urge? They felt it's the responsibility.
The responsibility.
It's a responsibility that's born in them, in their soul, in their heart, to go out and to make a difference for their nation.
And being Egyptian Americans, you don't think it's a bad thing. I always think it's a good thing if you're loyal to your home country, because if you're loyal to your home country, you might as well be loyal to the country that hosted you and gave you the citizenship and the whole nine.
I got to tell you, when you go to, regardless of what country, and you go to the events, if you watch the Olympics and your nation is up there, and you see and you hear the flag and you see some of the people from your nation winning, the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and the proud joy of that, and the tears come down your eyes. That's what people want. That's where they came from. That is their beginning and their existence.
We had some demonstration and celebration in a way where the Egyptians went out and voted in the Egyptian consulate. On May 17th in particular, we had the whole people standing in the street dancing in nice music, national music. And what touched me the most is that people brought American flags alongside with the Egyptian flag. So it was really a good touch because they never forgot about America. This is the country where it gives them opportunities. This is where they fulfill their dreams on this land. So I was so happy to see the Egyptian flags and the American flags, together at this demonstration.
Well, I get a chance. I represent so many different people. I represent the Chinese Americans. I represent the Italians. I represent the Egyptians, the Iraqis, the Jewish communities. And I go and I watch and I see as their flags and their nations, their songs are sung. You can see the tears in the people's eyes, regardless of which nation they're from. They're proud of it, and they sing the songs loud and clearly. And even at American, you can see the same thing, the American freedom, the American, when they see that, and they see that flag up there, they sing as loud as they do for their own nation. So there's something that brought them here. And once they got here, the other reason my father could never go back to Ireland is once he got to this great nation and he seen what this great nation offered him, or for his children, or for his families. He knew that he would never be able to go back and live in Ireland, that he would be a citizen of this great country, but would visit it many, 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 many times. I remember going to my home country. I've been into different countries around the world, and I've seen the different cultures, and I've seen the respect of the people and the communities, but that burning desire of where you come from, where you came from, never ever dies within you.
So, Senator Golden, what do you advise the Egyptian government and the Egyptian population to deal with the minority group of the Muslim Brotherhood that were kicked out of power because of many reasons we all know about? We want peace. So how can we pursue that?
Well, I believe that the people of Egypt have spoken. In this election process, they voted for El-Sisi, which has not only changed the direction and the leadership of Egypt, but has also taken the Brotherhood out of its leadership positions. And I think the overwhelming numbers of people that went out and voted for El-Sisi is in itself a recognition that they too do not want these people in power. And I go back again to Ireland, where my parents came from. There was always the North and the South. The North was controlled by the British, and the South controlled by the Irish. So the IRA and the battles with the Irish Republican Army and others went on for hundreds of years. Yes. But it prevailed over time that you have a united Ireland today. They have some differences, but it's a united Ireland. But it took hundreds of years to get there. The Middle East has been fighting for thousands of years in different areas. But in Egypt itself, we can see that the change that the people demanded, demand change for peace, demand change for the future of their families and of that of Egypt. So I think they want jobs, they want economic development, they want good education. They want good healthcare system. They want to be able to turn and raise their families and stay and live in Egypt. So I think the overwhelming number, the overwhelming support for the new leadership will in fact you will not see the Brotherhood in power for, I don't think ever. I think that's the end of the Brotherhood.
Do you agree that the work has to be done together between the leader and the population and the people?
Definitely. The leader's got to be in the streets. The leader's got to know what's going on, and the only way you know that is by having people from the towns and the villages part of his administration, and that they have a say, and that he's out there. He understands what their needs are and how to address those needs. It's one thing to say you need jobs, but how do you get those jobs? What type of jobs do you need? And how do you incentivize those jobs going to that community? So he has a lot of work to do for himself to rebuild that nation. So it's not going to be easy, but my hat is off to him. I think he will be successful. I think he already sees the number of people that came out to vote, so he knows he has support of Egypt itself and the Egyptian people from around the world that will support him as well.
Last question, Senator Golden. Americans and Egyptians have been always friends. We always had very good relationship. How do you see that in the current situation and what we hope for in the future?
I see that the future will be bright for our nation and for the new leadership in Egypt. As I said in my earlier statement, the Camp David Accord, Egypt, the strongest nation in the Middle East, Israel and the United States, to make sure that there is peace throughout the Middle East. We stand by that agreement, and Egypt has stood by that agreement, and that's why peace has been in the Middle East for so many years. And I believe that that will continue, and this nation and the nation of Egypt will always be good friends and good neighbors. Thank you very much,
Senator Golden. Really enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Morgan.
Thank you.
Magdi, who is an interpreter here in New York. What does this day mean for you, Magdi?
Really, means a lot to me because, to come over here, I live in Massachusetts. That's almost like 4 hours from here.
You drove all that way to vote.
Me and my family, and we just get up like probably by 4 o'clock in the morning. We prefer, and we made a decision to come over here, to give our vote and elect, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, because we really believe that he's going to be the future president of Egypt, and we really trust every word he said.
How is this election? How does it feel different to you?
Okay, that was really surprising me and my family because the first day when they start the election, we found like it's too really busy. You have like a long line. We can see this in the TV. So I was talking to my wife about, do you think that we can make it over here? Because it's really, I mean, like we have kids. We have 4 years. My son and we have 10 months. So I believe it's going to be hard for them, to be waiting in this this line, But we said, you know what, we need to do this step, because if we didn't do this step, who else is going to do it? We are Egyptian, and I'm American. I'm a U.S. citizen, and I'm proud of my Egyptianity, and I'm proud to be a U.S. citizen at the same time. We want to do this step to make the election, for the Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
I thank you.
I welcome Mr. Thomas Cox to our new program. Mr. Cox is a self-employed artist who lives in Brooklyn, and he knows a lot of Egyptians and Middle Eastern, and I would like to talk to him about his experience with the Arab world. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan.
Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, I was born in California. I grew up part of the time in Minnesota, went to the University of Minnesota, came to New York to see an art show, and I got offered a job in the art world, and I've been here 37 years now. Oh, wow, that's quite a long time.
It seems like you have a lot of activities in common with the Arab society and the Egyptian community. Can you tell us about it?
Well, it goes back to my first trip to East Africa in 1972. And the coast of East Africa is populated by Muslim people. And they made a highly favorable impression on me with their peaceful way of life and their cosmopolitan attitudes. I was also very interested in the art that they produced, related to Islamic artistry. Mm-hmm. And I've had an interest in Islamic art ever since. Mm-hmm. And then I had a completely favorable impression of Islam. And then when 9/11 happened, of course, there was so much anti-Muslim hysteria here, and I felt very protective of Muslim people because I knew so many to be nothing remotely like what was being portrayed.
The conservative Muslims.
Well, Muslims from different backgrounds, but just the same as non-Muslims. Most people want to live their own lives, and they're respectful of others. But I actually, it goes deeper than that. I really respect the tenets of the religion.
Sure.
And the way that people are close to God and really attempt to live along spiritual lines.
Let's talk about the Islamic art a little bit. What was the most area of the art that fascinated you?
Well, what I got to know first was the wood carving, but there's a geometric base to most Islamic art, even if it's floral and so-called arabesque. There's still an underlying geometry.
I like arabesque.
Yeah, so that it really has a harmony that is discernible even when it's got much elaboration to it. And the repeating motifs I find endlessly fascinating. And And then there's so many different variations on this throughout the Islamic world, but still a recognizable continuity over great distances and times.
Sure. I'm sure you know what's going on in Egypt now with the new presidential election. And I know that you mingle with a lot of Egyptian people. So I wanted to get an idea of how do you view the election and the process of electing a new president and the ouster of the Muslim Brotherhood president, and what do you think of that?
Well, I think many people in this country, myself included, were very hopeful when the original revolution that ousted Mubarak turned into something that seemed democratic, and that there was an election that seemed fair. Now, we knew at the time that the Muslim Brotherhood had an advantage because they were organized, whereas opposition parties didn't have. They
were the only organized group.
Right. I mean, the only one that had significant long-term organization. Correct. So they had a big advantage, and so when the election came to be favorable to Morsi, there wasn't a huge surprise. But we could at least say, well, it was a democratic election, and hopefully by the next election there will be more choice for people to really be on an equal basis.
So you see Egypt is going towards democracy? I
did, but I to tell you the truth, I have reservations here, because I think the problem with the military takeover is who determines that this is the will of the people. That was the claim of the military, but did they conduct a big poll, or did they?
33 million people went out in the street to ouster Morsi, and 45 million people went out in the street to put the responsibility of the military to fight terrorism and stop all the damage that is happening in Egypt. Okay, so but this is the real poll.
Okay. So I mean, this is the contradictory information we get. But at the same time, right away when the military took over, there were more people killed than during the time of Morsi.
Because of the suicide bombers, because of the terrorists that are trying to use the circumstances and make the military looks bad the way.
The predicament that I'm in, and I think the dilemma that many people are in here, is that we hear contradictory information. Now, one of the interesting articles that I read recently, 11 days ago, May 23rd, in the New York Times, there was an article printed on a Pew Research Center poll that was released the day before, which found that the actual popularity of General Sisi was about the same as the popularity of Morsi was 3 weeks, or at least several weeks, before his ouster. So this is different than the way it's being portrayed by the Egyptian military.
Well, Mr. Cox, you're talking to me about an article, and I'm talking to you about an actual footage and pictures of 45 million people in the street. There's no way you can beat that.
You know, I don't know about that figure, but you see, that's what I say. It's contradictory. I don't know how many people were in that demonstration. You know, I just think it's very hard to say, and I don't know where you got that figure yourself. But
it's Google Earth. Google Earth has calculated the distance of where people were standing and per square feet how many people would be standing in that lot, and they figured it's about 45 million people out in the street.
So then at least we have to say that what the poll that the Pew Research Center conducted and this Google that you referred to are contradictory. And I think that that's where we go. But when you focus on human rights, which is what my emphasis always is, you can link that to democracy, because I think one man, one vote, or one person, one vote is what we're really all looking for ultimately. And there are shortcuts along the way where that seems to be an impossible goal, and somebody is going to have to take over to maintain stability. And I think maybe that's what the argument here is for the military takeover, because I wouldn't want to get into an argument of whether it was a coup.
No, we're never going to argue. We were just discussing the situation.
No, but I mean, somebody wanted to call it a coup and somebody wanted to say, no, it wasn't a coup, it was the will of the people. To me, that's not an important argument. But what we do know is that the people of Egypt would like to have a stable government.
Correct.
And we know that they would like to have something of a democratic government. They seem to respond to elections. But then we get into trouble when those in power assert their power against an opposition. And how do you make way for an opposition in a country that has not had a long history of democracy? So I think that's where it gets complicated.
So I think what you're saying is that Egypt was not ready for democracy after the Mubarak regime? I don't know. I wouldn't say that, but I wouldn't argue that either. I think that there's not a good alternative to democracy, you know, conceptually. Now, maybe you could say, if you look back in history, you could say, well, in this case, you know, there was a military government that actually it ended up being more peaceful than the previous democratically elected government. But that's not something you can know in advance. So I think hard to predict.
Yes.
It's hard to predict. Yes. What do you say for 23 million votes to El-Sisi out of 26 million? Well,
we know that the Muslim Brotherhood called for you know...
They striked? They didn't?
Yeah, they called for a non-vote. You
know how many of the Muslim Brotherhood, as per the Egyptian government statistics in Egypt, around 300,000 people.
Actual members, but their influence goes much further.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But
so, you know, there were problems with, for instance, you know, the banning of that party as an illegal party, and the putting on, handing down military sentences to the Muslim Brotherhood. I can't agree with that sort of thing.
Well, if they preach killing of people and they encouraged the chaos that happened in Egypt, and they wanted less stability to the Egyptians, I think the government had to step down and put their foot down and say, enough. Enough is enough.
See, I'm not so sure that I agree with you there. I think that that would be a viewpoint of the Egyptian military. See, I'm really trying to maintain something of a neutrality here.
Yeah, you know, I understand.
Where, you know, I'm not going to jump on.
But have you heard about the killings of the soldiers in Sinai? Have you heard about the killing of the civilians in Egypt? Those suicide bombers, burning of churches. 92 churches were burned, and you can't convince me that Christians whom are the ones that burned their own churches. It had to be somebody burning them.
Yeah, okay, we know
churches,
that, but
92 churches.
But if you want to jump quickly to saying that you know exactly who's responsible, I think that's where it gets difficult.
Okay. So you want, in other words, you're suggesting that we further investigate? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think so, and I think,
and that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think the quick military trials are hard to justify. I think.
No, that's fair. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
We have to investigate. We cannot just jump into conclusions and assume that a certain section of the populations are causing all the trouble.
Right.
So we want. So you want fairness. You want justice. You want more investigation. But you agree that if they've convicted, they have to face the penalties, right?
Well, if there's a fair trial, and if it's beyond the shadow of a doubt, that's what we talk about in this country.
Okay.
For determining guilt or innocence, we start with the presumption of innocence.
Sure.
And you have to prove a person guilty. And
it's only fair. It's only
I think
fair.
that's what we should look for.
Sure.
But you know, if one party is in power and then goes after the other party, that's where the problems are.
It gets tricky. But for the sake of the stability now, what do you advise the party that is in power now? What's your advice to the parties in power, and what's your advice to the population, to the people?
The first thing I think is called for would be to lift that outlawing of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
That to me is not a democratic action. I think that all parties have to be allowed to state their views, and then
even though their leaders came on TV and they encouraged the killing of the civilians and killing and terrorizing the rest of the population.
I'd have to see that footage myself.
Yes, but let's agree that you saw it. And
I can't put myself in that position.
You can't put yourself in that position.
No, because I would go back to, you know, a fair trial would be called for. If there is some kind of footage of people calling for the killing of innocent people,
yes,
I think that's a very serious crime, and it needs to be dealt with by the judiciary.
All right. Yeah. So I think we are in agreement here. Is that if somebody does something wrong, they need to be penalized. All what we need to know: fair investigation, fair trial, more looking into the problem, and then the results has to be fair. It has to be just. Okay.
Right.
Mr. Cox, are you a part or a member of any organization that helps in the Middle East?
Well, I'm a member of Brooklyn for Peace, which is involved with a number of interests in Brooklyn and throughout the world. I'm specifically a member of the Israel-Palestine section of Brooklyn for Peace.
Oh.
And
is it Israel-Palestine or Palestine-Israel?
I believe they've put Israel first.
Okay.
But that's not the important part. I think
is it the chicken or the egg?
we're interested in human rights.
Yes.
And so in the case of Israel and Palestine, we advocate the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. Brooklyn for Peace is in agreement with that, because it is a peaceful movement.
So you're in agreement to provide peace to the Middle East. So this is your main goal. You're not really supporting either the Israelis or the Palestinians. No, you're supporting the peace in the Middle East area. Is that
right? I mean, there are many Jewish Israelis who actually advocate for boycott, divestment, and sanctions also, because what is happening there that I object to, and that our organization objects to, is that there is discrimination on the basis of religion or ethnicity. And that's what I would object to, and that's the same thing I would object to in Egypt and throughout the world.
Mr. Cox, finally, if you have an opportunity to hold an art exhibit in Egypt, would you do that?
I would be very interested in that.
Oh, that's amazing. So we'll try to reach out to the areas where they're responsible for artistic work, and we'll try to help out in mediating this process. And thank you for coming to our show. And
thank you, Dr.